lecture number 1 for Unit 4B, the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages generally refer to the period of time in Western Europe from around 500 CE, or the fall of the Western Roman Empire, and the Renaissance period beginning around 1450 CE. The Renaissance is going to be our next unit of study. We've already learned about how the fall of the Western Roman Empire is going to result in chaos across Western Europe. You're going to see barbaric tribes from all different places, all competing for power and for influence. This was an unstable and scary time for the common person. We're going to see an overall decline in learning. We're going to see the loss of Latin as a common language. And we're going to see the rise of local dialects emerging instead of Latin, all over the place. So this is an unstable time for many people. But at the same time, a lot of progress was made by some individuals and organizations. We're going to see the power of the Catholic Church increasing during this time period. And, in order to really understand the Middle Ages and what happened, one of the main people we're going to study today is a guy named Charlemagne and what he did for Europe. So let's talk a little bit about Charlemagne and how he's going to help establish an empire known as the Carolingian Empire. First and foremost, to give you a little background, a guy named Charles Martel, Charlemagne's grandfather, he's going to establish the Franks as the most powerful group of people in Europe. Charlemagne is eventually going to build an empire called the Carolingian Empire. To give you a little information about who Charlemagne and Charles Martel were, well, Charlemagne and Charles Martel, they were both Franks, which is to say they were from the former Roman province of Gaul. And the Franks, they were a Germanic tribe who had settled in Gaul, but we now call this territory, most of it is now called France. We've already learned from a video that we watched together that the first Frankish king was a guy named Clovis, and we've learned that he converted to Christianity and used warfare and murder to spread Frankish rule across Europe. And by 511 CE, he had accomplished all of this. A later king by the name of Charles Martel will take control of the Frankish Empire during the 700s. And it was Martel's son, a guy named Pepin the Short, who's going to establish what became known as the Carolingian dynasty. So what was the Carolingian dynasty? Well, this was the ruling family for the Franks from around 751 to 987 CE. Of Pepin the Short's two sons, we're going to see Charlemagne emerge as the next emperor of the Carolingian dynasty. He will continue this dynasty and make it even more powerful. Charlemagne will go on to become the most powerful king in Western Europe and eventually will be given the title of Roman Emperor by Pope Leo III. And this is going to be really significant in that it's going to mark the beginning of, in essence, a combination of church and state in Western European territories. Having a pope label a leader as the emperor created a situation in which the Western Church had a great deal of influence over future kings. So who exactly was Charlemagne? What was his connection to the Pope? Charlemagne was able to legitimize his rule by using the power of the church and vice versa. It was a mutually beneficial relationship that helped both Charlemagne and the church have control over the general population. Well, Charlemagne wasn't the only king to ally himself with the church. His grandfather, Charles Martel, had also aligned himself with the church and was devoted to Christianity. In fact, Charles Martel further proved his loyalty to the church and Christianity at the famous Battle of Tours, where he fought to prevent the spread of Islam in Europe. There had already been Islamic influence in much of Spain during the early Middle Ages under the Umayyad Caliphate and the Al-Andalus Empire. As the Umayyads pushed further east into what we now call France, Charles Martel's armies essentially prevented the takeover of their territory. This was seen by the church and Christians as a decisive turning point in victory for Christianity, and it helped set the stage for conflict between Muslims and Christians for generations to come. The Battle of Tours in 732 CE helped to ensure that France remained a Christian territory. Charlemagne is then going to continue a Christian legacy in his Frankish kingdom and continue to maintain a close relationship with the church. Although the demographics of France are changing in modern times, a majority of the population in France today identify as Catholic Christians, even if they don't actively practice. Charlemagne's Carolingian dynasty later broke apart after his death when his empire was left to his sons. His sons began fighting each other over this territory, and after signing a treaty called the Treaty of Verdun, Charlemagne's empire was divided into 3 separate kingdoms. This really weakened kings' power to control Western Europe, and it resulted in a new political and social system called feudalism. It also resulted in a new economic system based on the feudal way of life called the manor system, or manorialism. But more on that later, as I always say. Thanks for listening. Bye.